Good morning. Today is Friday, January 6th, 2023. Trust gets you killed. Love gets you hurt. And being real gets you hated. Now that's kind of a dark, cynical view of life from Johnny Cash. Allow me to counter that with the story I'd like to share with you this morning. It is a true and remarkable story. I just heard it from Sivan Rahav Meir, and it relates to two separate topics that we addressed earlier this week. There's a woman in Israel. Her name is Fanny. And she made Aliyah from the United States. She married a man named Evyatar, an Israeli man. Her husband Evyatar has his whole family living in Israel. His grandmother's parents, along with two of her siblings, were murdered in Auschwitz in the Holocaust. 10 of her siblings survived. 9 of them decided to make Aliyah together to Israel. So you have 9 siblings that survived the Holocaust, and they moved to Israel right after the Second World War. 1 sibling, 1 sister, moves to the United States. Her name is Adele, the one in the United States. Adele, who settled in the United States, the only sibling, the only member of the family that did so, she never told anyone she was Jewish. She married a non-Jewish man. She did not even reveal to her husband that she was in fact Jewish. And she announced and decided that after the Holocaust, she would not bring children into the world. I have to add this in parentheses. This is just me now. In the course of our work with Gerus, with conversions, a large number of people of us have come to us for conversion where one parent, the father, was Jewish, but survived the Holocaust, but hid his identity, submerged his Jewish identity because he was afraid that it could happen again. And now, all these years later, there's a child who has grown up, who learns that there is Jewish heritage in her family, but that he or she is not Jewish according to Jewish law, and wants to reconnect with Judaism. I remember one day, we, the Bet Din, the rabbis of the Bet Din, we had 3 meetings with new candidates. We always have meetings with new candidates. People would come for us to meet with them, to hear their story, to see if they can join our program. And I remember one day we had 3 meetings, and all 3 of the candidates, unknown to each other, had the same story, that they had a father who had gone through the Holocaust, who then hid his identity, and now they wanted to reconnect with Judaism. Okay, but this woman, Adele, the only one in her family in the United States, she refused. She was so traumatized from the Holocaust, no Jewish identity, no connection, nothing. She also left instructions that upon her death, she wanted to be cremated. Now, this younger woman, Fanny, living in Israel, married into this large family of survivors and the descendants of survivors. She always heard this story. There's an Aunt Adele. No one ever had any contact with her. No one knew anything about her. but she always heard stories about Aunt Adele, the only one that went to America, no connection to Judaism, nothing at all. In Israel by this time, counting the descendants, there were more than 350 family members of these descendants of the survivors of the Holocaust. But there was always one piece missing. One of those original siblings that survived, Adele, in the United States. 2 years ago, Fanny was asked to travel to the United States as part of her job, part of her work. She was on a lecture tour, and one of the lectures that she gave turned out it was 5 minutes away from Aunt Adele's home, so she went there. She knocked on the door. A caregiver answered the door, and she said, "Could I speak to Adele Schwartz?" And the caretaker said, "I'm sorry, there's no one here by that name." And then Fanny realized, as part of what Aunt Adele had done, she had changed her name. No connection, no identity with Judaism, nothing at all. So Fanny comes in, and she sees a very elderly woman sitting down who looks strikingly similar to all of her siblings. Clearly, this is Aunt Adele, but with a different name. And this young woman, Fanny, starts to speak to her. She tells her who she is. She tells her about her family in Israel. She does a FaceTime on her phone with family members in Israel. And this woman, Adele, is speaking to relatives that she hasn't spoken to since the Second World War. They're speaking in Hungarian, and Adele is crying, and it's an amazing scene. This young woman, Fanny, is about to leave, and she hugs Aunt Adele, and she says the following words to her. She says, "Adele, Hitler is finished. The war is over. You have a huge family in Israel. You are not alone. And there is no reason to be afraid anymore. And it's not important how far away you are. You can always return. Don't allow Hitler to win. At the very least, come to Israel to be buried." Two weeks ago, Fanny and Eviatar received notification from a lawyer in the United States that Adele had passed away at the age of 102. And it turns out that Adele changed her mind. And at the very end of her life decided that she wanted a Jewish funeral, not to be cremated. So, Fanny, Eviatar, and many of the other relatives took up the challenge and made the arrangements to bring Adele to Israel for burial. And this past Wednesday at 5 p.m., Adele Schwartz was buried in Israel with hundreds of family members present. And she was buried beside the other members of her family in Israel. And Fanny says that it was one of the most remarkable incidents in her entire life. No one is so far away that they cannot come back. that they cannot come home. My friends, I wish you a great day and a wonderful Shabbos, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.